Hey, so today is the big day for the commission lawsuits out in Kansas City. The National Association of Realtors and the Sitzer Burnett case go to trial today, October 16th. Uh, the real estate agency industry is on trial. And yeah, I never really thought it would get this far. I thought there'd be a settlement, but nope. No news of a settlement over the weekend, and no news of a settlement this morning. Broadcasting to you from the East Coast at 8:30. So I don't know what it is Kansas City time right now. It's got to be 7:30 or 6. Somebody do the math for me. But it's earlier in the morning in KC, and so no news yet of a settlement. And there's usually right up until the point where you think you're going to trial, just like we talked about on Friday, there's no hint of a settlement, and then all of a sudden one of the sides caves. That's kind of how it works. Everyone goes in there with some bluster, and then at the very last second they settle. But nothing yet. So it appears as if the bombshell commission lawsuits, of which there are basically two, start today. This one's called Sitzer and Burnett versus the National Association of Realtors, and there's some other defendants, big real estate basically on trial. This one has a price tag of $4.8 billion. Let's just call it $5 billion between friends, potential damages. Now, most of your antitrust damages get tripled. So theoretically, this could be like a $15 billion settlement, right? Or liability for the industry. Not me, because I'm not a realtor. So I'm not being sued. But if for you realtors are out there, you're basically on trial today. How's that make you feel? Yeah, you're part of a vast conspiracy, allegedly. The other court case, and I think I'm going to mispronounce this, is Morel, I believe. And that has a price tag of approximately like 40 billion. There's a lot more money on that one. Now, these court cases were ostensibly about two things. One was the mandatory requirement that sellers pay a buyer side commission. And if you've been watching this channel over the last 2 or 3 weeks, 4 weeks, you've noticed that effectively the industry has capitulated on that. And they've all said that, yeah, we're not going to require that anymore. And that hasn't really gone into effect any place yet. Well, except for 2 places. We'll talk about that in a minute. But yeah, we're not going to require a mandatory requirement of offering. It will be optional. And so they caved on this principle issue. And to me, when you cave on principle, it's just a matter of time before you either cave on the money and or lose the case. Because if you're not arguing on principle, I don't know what you're arguing on. And remember, I mean, these court cases are not going to be heard by real estate professionals, right? They're going to be heard by your average Mr. and Mrs. America, right? That's who their jury is. It's regular people. And, regular people don't hold real estate professionals, real estate agents, real estate salespersons in the same regard like they hold firefighters or pharmacists, right? We're kind of more like down in the category of congressmen and used car dealers and telemarket. Yeah, somewhere in that neighborhood. Maybe a little bit better than some of those industries, but we're not with the pharmacist and the firefighter. We're not up in that lofty territory in terms of how people conceive of real estate agents. So, I'm not too confident that NAR is going to win this case. I don't think anyone should be. Apparently, NAR is still confident, but I mean, what else are they going to say? What are they going to go to trial say? We're not very confident. Of course, they're going to say they're confident, but in reality, they've already lost on the principle. They've caved on that kind of semi-voluntarily over the last couple of weeks. I covered this on this channel, where they're now saying that offering 0% commission now somehow magically complies with the mandatory requirement to offer buyer side compensation. It didn't used to be that way, but all of a sudden, out of nowhere, they just changed their minds. And when you're flicking the switch on principle, where that meets it. When it didn't meet it yesterday, well, it meets it today. That means you have no principles. And that's a slippery slope to losing not only court cases, but also the confidence of your membership. So today, let's just bring it up. Inman has if you don't have a subscription to Inman, I would recommend it. A very good article on what's at stake, who's going to be testifying. It is very, very, very lengthy. What are the allegations? We just talked about that. And again, we're talking about the participation rule. In filing a property with multiple listing services, participants make a blanket unilateral offer of compensation to other MLS participants. And therefore should specify in each listing with the service compensation being offered to the listing broker. Remember, the very essence of why the MLS exists is to facilitate cooperation from otherwise competitors, right? So that you can go into the MLS and you can say, oh, that's how much I'm going to get paid. And there's a big, big penalty if you list a house at, let's just say, cooperating commission of 2.5%, and then you accept an offer on it on, let's just say, Thursday, and then Friday you go back and you change that 2.5% to 1%. Oh my God, you are going to be risking your membership in the MLS, and probably a lot more. So, and you don't want to lose your membership in the MLS because obviously that's the gateway to kind of do business. So your offer of compensation is kind of gold there. But while you can't change it after you've accepted an offer because that guarantees that the seller is going to pay that commission, you can now apparently offer zero. You can offer zero. They've all caved in the last couple of weeks. Which brings us to, I can't, mention again, the importance that maybe that doesn't matter. And all of these court cases maybe don't matter. Well, not all of them, but the civil ones don't matter as much as the one party that's not part of this case, and that's the Department of Justice. The Department of Justice is not party to the case that's going to take place today, Sitzer, which is about a 3-week window to get a verdict on this. I think early November is what is expected, even that whatever that verdict is, it will probably be appealed. And good morning, by the way, for those of you watching. Hey, Larry, how are you today? Will jurors be selected today, Larry wants to know. I would imagine they'll start that process. I'm not an attorney. I was too smart to go to law school, so I wouldn't know. But I would imagine that would be like one of the first things they do, right? Is select the jury. Yeah, I guess so. But these things do move at a glacial pace, Larry. It's not like a TV movie, right? So the other part is that if compensation is optional, will that even matter? And this is what I've been hearing or hammering home on this channel is that there's significant evidence that if you make seller compensation optional, it won't matter. The evidence to that seems to be the Department of Justice's own statement in the local MLS PIN no select case where they said it didn't matter. And also, as I mentioned this last week, the Consumer Federation of America did a study on 733 listings out in the Northwest MLS who voluntarily adopted this rule. And they compared it to prior listings and they said it didn't matter. So, it's my sense that what is really at stake today with this court case is the dollar figure that NAR may or may not have to pay. The principle is not at stake. And that principle is going to have to wait for another day when the Department of Justice makes its play on this topic. And basically what I'm saying is the way I read through the lines, again, not a lawyer here, but the way reading through the Department of Justice statement, they are not satisfied with an optional system. They are not satisfied with an optional system, even though here in Boston, Judge Patty Saris said she loved the optional system. The Department of Justice is not sold on that. And I'm convinced that they're going to want to move to a system where sellers are prohibited from paying the fee to the buyer side agent at all. That's just my feeling on it. By the way, Rob Hahn has up at Notorious Rob substack.com has a great article on this whole thing. Most of his stuff is behind a paywall, but not this article. You should go over to notoriousrob.substack.com and read his article. One of the things that really got me in this article here is the whole identity of being a realtor has always been the idea that real estate licensees are unethical scumbags, while realtor members with a code of ethics are shining examples of ethical professionalism. And that's true. Like, do business with a realtor because we're more ethical. Basically, it's a way to throw everybody else in the business under the bus. And I think the subliminal message of that is going to come back and bite NAR in the ass in this trial, because basically they're saying, hey, we're not like them. And I think your average consumer doesn't know the difference, right? How many times, if you're a realtor, this probably doesn't happen, but I'm not, as you know, and people call me that all the time. This is Jack, my realtor. And I don't correct them because, I'm not going to go do that. But occasionally I might. But people, it's like Kleenex. They don't, or Xerox. They don't distinguish. It's become such a successful brand that it's actually lost its identity. There's massive studies about this in marketing. Xerox, Kleenex are probably the most two prominent examples where you can build such a brand that the thing becomes the thing and then it's meaningless. And I think that's what's happened to the realtor brand for a lot. People don't understand the difference between you're a member or not a member, and it's meaningless. And I think that's and part of their whole branding is to throw non-realtors under the bus. And I think that's going to come back and bite NAR in the ass with this trial. All right, talk about stupid lawsuits. Talking about stupid lawsuits, this one we're not going to spend a lot of time on this, but judge affirms agent's right to create floor listing plans. So, if you didn't know, there was a court case. These architects argued that if you create a floor plan of a house that they designed, that's an infringement of their copyright, because you would then use that floor plan to then resell the house, for resale. Not when you were using it to sell it when it was new construction, but for resale. And so the judge just laughed this case out of court. It's ridiculous. Making a floor plan is somehow an infringement on copyright? No, it's not. And finally, they got the law right. This cut a bump in the road a couple of times, but finally got this right. It's called fair use, which is the same thing that people use to make parodies on the internet, or to even like for me to post this article on a YouTube. I'm creating a new act, or a new what do they call it? A new piece of art, effectively, and therefore I can use their copyright article because I'm creating a new work of art, of which theirs is just a piece. It's not, and there's a lot of legal mumbo jumbo to go along with that, but effectively a floor plan is just that. All right, so just crazy lawyer stuff. I mean, it's just amazing how much lawyers waste of our lives. I know there's a lot of good lawyers out there. I get that. One of my favorites is actually right down the street. But when I worked at the State House, there was a law school right across the street, and I could have gotten my law license. But my gut feeling at the time was every time I came across a lawyer, they were always saying why you couldn't do something. And I'm somebody who likes to get things accomplished. And I was like, every lawyer I met at the state is like, oh, you can't do that. You can't do that. I'm like, is there anybody who wants to tell me how we can do it? Yeah. So just looking at that kind of world mindset, I decided I'm not going to go to law school. All right, let's talk about this week's economic reports. We have Empire Manufacturing Survey that just came out right now. That's probably not going to be looking good. We have a lot of Fed speak this week. Lots of Fed speak. Tomorrow we have retail sales. And the home builder confidence tomorrow, and lots of Fed speakers. I'm going to be interested to what say the Minneapolis Fed president Neil Kashkari says tomorrow at 10:30 a.m. I think I'm going to turn into that. Wednesday we have housing starts and building permits. I don't know what those are going to be. We're going to be very eager to see that. And existing home sales. Existing home sales come in on Thursday at 10 a.m. There's a lot of talk that they're going to be below 4 million, with the expectation right now at 3.9 million. Fed Chairman Jerome Powell speaks also on Thursday at noon. We got Goolsbee at Thursday afternoon. I mean, there's a lot of all the Fed speakers are out there putting their spin on the economy. Meanwhile, mortgage rates are 7.66, off just a touch from what they were, because effectively what we had last week was the instability in the Middle East and a lot of Fed speak. And basically that meant two things. There was a flight to safety in some situations when there's instability across the globe. People tend to buy U.S. Treasuries, and therefore a little bit of the edge came off the bond yields, and as a result came off mortgage rates. Now, secondly, that there was a lot of Fed speak last week saying that we're all done hiking and that type of talk. Lots of that last week. So the market listened to both of those dynamics, and we kind of came off the highs a little bit. Right now, this morning, we are at, on the 10-year Treasury, just off 4.7. So if you look at let's just say we look at the 1 month here, you can see these highs that we're at, and we've slidden off a little bit from that. But if you look at the year chart, I mean, what does the year chart tell you? I mean, we've been on a tear since May, right? We've been on a tear since May. And unless we really start to get lower lows on this chart, we're going to be looking at higher highs. Yeah, the number one reason for that, of course, is even if the Fed pauses and there's no more rate hikes, the number one reason for that is the federal government spending. Remember, there are basically two things that, I mean, there's a lot of things, but basically two things that control inflation, or theoretically control inflation. And that's what the Fed does, and that's what the Congress does. All right, 1 second. I want to talk about housing affordability as our last segment today. And I thought that this video by economist Peter St. Onge, I don't know how you pronounce his name, but forgive me, Peter, for mispronouncing your name, said it all about affordable housing in the United States. Let's hit it. And we won't listen to it. I'll interrupt it as the video goes along.
The Atlanta Fed just put out a new report saying home ownership affordability has fallen to a new record low. It has never been worse. Even lower than 2006.
I mean, think about that. It's never been more it's never been tougher to buy a house. Never been tougher to buy a house. That's not good for society as a whole. You know, I remember when I was teaching real estate class 4, 5, 6, 7 years ago, or over those years, and I kept on saying to people, hey, interest rates at 3%, that's not normal. I didn't know what the consequence of that was, because I'm not an economist, but I knew it wasn't good. When the federal government artificially kept interest rates low for like 15 years, I knew there was going to be some type of consequence to that, and we're living it now. Go ahead, Peter.
Which was right before the subprime mortgage crisis that kicked off the global financial crisis. According to the Atlanta Fed, it currently takes 44% of pre-tax median household income to buy the median house. Note that's pre-tax. That's after Uncle Sam got their hunk. So you are left with less than half what you got paid.
Whoa.
In some cities, it's actually a lot worse. In Boston, it's 50% of pre-tax. Miami is at 55%. New York is at 63%. And LA and San Francisco are hitting 84% of pre-tax income for the median house. That's almost 9/10 of what you earn. So good luck with groceries. You would literally have to eat the house. Sadly, they do not make gingerbread that big, so
That's
at this
a good line.
point, it is only the rich who are buying and passing it on in rent. So, what's driving it? Fundamentally, like so much of what's sending us over the cliff, federal spending.
This is what I've been talking about, right? The federal spending. Everyone's focused on the Federal Reserve right now, but it's actually, but remember, just as equally powerful in this is federal spending, which is, even though there's no Speaker of the House right now, there's nobody in Washington, and this is including, well, very few people in Washington, including Democrats and Republicans, who are willing to turn this around. They're both guilty.
Which drove up inflation, which then drove up house prices. The Fed's zero interest rate policies piled on top since houses get more expensive with the cheap mortgages.
Let's say that again. The house is less expensive. The house is more expensive when the money becomes almost free. All right. So when you can get a 3% mortgage, the house becomes more expensive.
At low rates bring. Sadly, at this point, those cheap mortgages are long gone. They're hitting roughly 8% now, but they left the prices behind since now sellers are locked in by those 8% mortgages, which means that home prices are stuck. They're not coming back down because nobody is selling. So they broke it, then they fixed it by breaking it some more.
And I think this is the lesson that we see with a lot of politicians, both parties, that they always come into office and they say, "Oh, the market's not working. Let's fix the market." And the reason why the market's not working is because the prior group of politicians put a bunch of fixes in, and they made the market not work. Instead of getting rid of restriction and regulation and let the market actually do its job, every politician, every generation of politician comes in and says, "Oh, look at the market's not working. Let's do some more manipulation to make it work," and they just make it worse.
Finally, on top of those 8% mortgages and those $400,000 starter homes, property taxes and insurance are both growing like a cancer, adding thousands on top for homeowners. Now, property taxes rise in lockstep with your home price, so they've risen about 30% in the past couple of years.
We've seen that a lot here in Plymouth. Whew, taxes, my mortgage, the money I send in is gone up, and it's all through the taxes because I have a fixed rate like most people.
While home insurance is actually rising so fast that,
and that's also gone up. If you own a home, you've seen a home insurance. It's disgusting.
Millions of Americans are literally skipping home insurance and praying for the best, going naked in the industry lingo, and I talked about that in a recent video. Taken together, the prices, the mortgages, the taxes, and the insurance have nearly doubled the cost of owning a home in just 2.5 years. Of course, note that all of those costs get passed on even to low-income renters.
So the point is it's incredibly difficult to buy a home in the United States right now. And that's not good for our country writ large. It's not good for our industry either. And what we're seeing now is a dearth of transactions, right? And if you're a rank and file agent out there, you're going to have to kind of get used to this environment where there's not as many transactions as there used to be. Now, if you're a new agent, this will just be your normal. But if you're an incumbent agent and you've been licensed for 5, 10, 15, 20 years or something like that, you're going to have to adjust because there's no quick way out of this low transaction environment that we're in, right? It took a long time to get here. As I've said, it's gonna be a while before we get out of it. So you've got to start to think that this is how it's going to be. This is the new normal. What do I do to get a piece of a pie, which is significantly shrunk? And you could, if you want, and we've talked about this many times in this channel, you could start to go out and buy advertising. My strategy instead, my strong strategy, you said, would be rather build a brand around yourself that survives whether we have a good market or a bad market or whatever it happens to be. You know, a lot of people right now are dropping out of the real estate industry, and there's not as many people coming in. Definitely I can see that in the school signups that we run here. Obviously, I run a real estate school, and on top of the fact that we're not all locked into our homes right now, but real estate is not hot right now. And there's a massive amount of people out there that are making a miscalculation about when it's time to get into the real estate market as an agent. And the time is now, because if you wait until real estate's hot again, the people that did the work to build a brand, now when things are slow, they're going to be the ones that benefit when things turn around. And if you wait on your career to wait to catch the wave, I'm going to get licensed when the wave starts to crest. Oh, you're way behind. You're way behind. You want to start to get licensed and build your brand now when there's not much going on, right? So that by the time you get that going, the market will change, and then you will be in a position to catch the wave. You always want to put yourself in a position to win. And if you're waiting to jump in when the wave is crest, you're way beyond. You're way behind. All right, so I'll keep you up to date on the whole commission lawsuit thing. Again, I think it's more of a monetary thing at this point, not so much a rule change, because the industry has capitulated on the rule change. And as the Consumer Federation of America has told us, that rule change might not matter that much. Therefore, what I'm really looking forward to finding out about, and I think this will be a much thing that develops in 2024, is what will the Department of Justice do? All right, so I'm Jack from Jack Gately Real Estate and the Online Real Estate Academy, broadcasting to you from beautiful Plymouth, Massachusetts. You have a great day. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.